Thank you for tuning in this evening. I'm told we have several hundred current and prospective students, alumni, friends, faculty, and staff, and others viewing this event. That is really fantastic. I would be remiss if I didn't thank not only my team, but all others who have assisted with setting up and planning this event. They've done a great job. And thank you, Bob, again for moderating. We have some fantastic speakers planned for this webinar series, and one of those is this evening. In 2017, P. Barry Butler became the 6th president of Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, the world's leading institution of higher education, focusing on aviation and aerospace. Under his presidency, Embry-Riddle continues to expand discovery-driven degree programs, and its research park is home to new aerospace patents, technology transfer, and startups. Dr. Butler has encouraged collaboration with industry, resulting in expedited hiring initiatives with leading aviation and aerospace industries. He's expanding the university's interests in aviation cybersecurity, aviation data analytics, and autonomous vehicles. President Butler is focused on aviation and aerospace workforce development with special interests in diversity and STEM education. Previously, Dr. Butler was Executive Vice President and Provost of the University of Iowa, and prior to that, he served for 10 years as the Dean of the College of Engineering at Iowa. President Butler is on the board of the Hoover Presidential Foundation and the Wings Club. He is a member of the Civic League of the Halifax area. He is a private pilot and also a glider pilot. He earned 3 degrees from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, a bachelor's in aeronautical engineering, a master's in astronautical engineering, and a Ph.D. in mechanical engineering. Dr. Butler, welcome to our program this evening, and thank you so much for taking the time. And with that, Bob, I'm going to hand it back to you to get us started.
All right, thank you, Dr. Stolzer. And again, welcome, Dr. Butler. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I'd like to start off with probably the question that's on everybody's mind, starting with the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the past 2 months, the leadership of the university has been focused really on the pandemic primarily. Can you share about the efforts undertaken by the university?
Yeah, I will. Before I start, I wanted to say a few words. I had a chance to tune in for the first broadcast of this when you had the CEO from Airbus America, Jeff Niddle, and I thought it was wonderful. So thank you for including me as a guest.
Thank you
yeah, so the
much.
question is really about the pandemic and what happened primarily over the last 3 months. Like a lot of schools around the country, pretty much all schools, we had to mobilize a team to start planning. We met every day, including Saturdays and Sundays, for about the first 5 to 6 weeks. And we really had 2 different groups. We had sort of an operations team and a leadership team. And the operations team is built from individuals from all the campuses, enabled to look at the operational aspects of the campuses. And at that time, we were still teaching. We were just, I think, going on spring break about that time. And then as we address different issues, when they require decisions and the group of leaders to get together, that percolates up to the leadership team. So that structure has worked quite well. We've been working hard. We still meet every day. We will for a long, long time. But it's a process that works really well. We focused across all dimensions of trying to make sure that the campuses were safe for not just our students, but our faculty and our staff. Made decisions along the way to address that. At one point going online with our education, at another point on both residential campuses, following the work at home recommendations, in both cases, in both states, stay-at-home orders. And we've been really learning. You know, we're not public health experts. We're engineers, we're business people, we're aviators. And so we've been every day looking at what's going on out there around the country and around the world from the public health experts, particularly those at universities, and trying to draw that into Embry-Riddle. As a lot of people will tell you, solutions are not the same for each university. We are different from a large public university. And even within that, we have a third campus, as you know, in Singapore, And that campus is more or less governed by different policies and rules in Singapore. And so we have to take all that into account. We've been trying to pull in as much information as we can. And that also includes from our board of trustees. We have trustees who are leaders in the industry and academia, and so we draw on their expertise as well. In the big picture, we've moved from early March, I think was when we first started on this, through the spring semester, going online, and now we're preparing for the summer. Summer B, we just announced recently that would be going to face-to-face classes, and we could talk about that a little bit more later. But it's been a very interesting process, and one you don't get. You don't learn this when you're a graduate student, how to get ready for something like this.
Yeah, you've been in university administration for quite a while. Can you think of any experience from your background that may have helped prepare you for a situation like this?
Yeah, I mean, there's really no preparation for a pandemic. I know 10 years ago, I think when I was a dean, we had to go through a tabletop exercise, and it was all about a pandemic, what's going to happen and how would we react. And I think most of the deans at the time were thinking, yeah, this is really just an exercise. But one experience I did have, which was tremendous in terms of preparation for an event, let's just say, was in 2008. There were significant flooding events in Iowa, where I was working at the time. They were on the order of 500-year events from a statistical point of view. So just beyond what anybody ever had planned for. Everything was built for 100-year events, and now you get hit with a 500-year event. I was, part of the process, but really our leader at the time, Dr. Sally Mason, who happens to be on the board of trustees at Embry-Riddle now, she was, I think, a fairly new president. And so I was working for her, and we were sort of doing the same sorts of things, day to day. How do you deal with this? How do you deal with that? Bring people into the room, try to solve problems. And I'll tell you, I learned a lot from that. I wasn't a major player in it, but just being part of it was incredible. The most significant part was, so the National Guard was actually on campus for a couple of weeks helping with sandbagging and those sorts of things. And they were ready to leave. They had to go downriver to the next town that was being flooded. And as they were getting ready to leave, the colonel who was in charge, we had all the leadership teams. We had a daily meeting just like we do here at Embry-Riddle. And he pulled the group together and he said, I have witnessed an amazing leadership here in terms of how you as a group have addressed a problem. And he said, if I had a camera in the corner of the room, I would have recorded it and shared it with my troops. And so I took that as an endorsement for whatever it was I was going through at the time. That learning lesson was good. And so I've drawn on some of that as we've dealt with the pandemic. It's not the same issue, but it's the same sort of decision making and addressing problems that you've never been faced with before.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know, you're talking about having a lot of meetings with different people, not just different people, but different places around the world. Have you had any challenges with, getting in touch and communicating with people, since you're talking about, in Singapore and Arizona and Florida?
We have pretty good communications. We even before the pandemic, we would get together with the Singapore folks on a pretty regular basis. The time difference makes it interesting. Either you're in the office really early in the morning or late at night, but we communicate with them pretty regularly. And then Prescott, we have regular calls back and forth between the two campuses. And so that part of it really wasn't much of an issue.
Okay. Well, I know, a lot of the residential campuses moved to online instruction fairly quickly. Can you share any of the feedback you received from the transition, both from the students and the professors and all the staff involved?
Yeah, it's very interesting because it was a fairly fast transition. If you recall, a lot of schools were going back to face and then suddenly changing, and we just made the decision that we were on spring break at the time, and that we would go online, and we bumped it out, I think, a couple of days after the end of spring break to give you faculty some time to get ready. And I fully appreciate what the faculty went through. I think everybody knows how difficult it is to prepare a single lecture. It's as you know from teaching, to stand in there and give a 50-minute lecture might take you 3 or 4 hours of preparation. And that's prepared for a particular mode of delivery, in person, face-to-face. And then suddenly to be asked to switch over to online education is very challenging. And so, we know that some faculty actually have told me that they started anticipating things in advance, so they started working on it. A lot of our faculty have even though they were teaching face-to-face, had been putting content into the Canvas system, our online system, so that helped an awful lot. So there's just the transition issue. And for the students, the same thing. It's if you've never taken an online course, suddenly you're taking 4 or 5 of them all at once. That's different. You're doing it back home, perhaps. You got in a routine of living in a residence hall or your apartment. So there was so much in transition. But I think by and large, people understood this is bigger than them. This was not about their inconvenience. It was about the fact that we're dealing with something that was deadly, and safety and health was the number one sort of purpose for doing these things. And yes, there were some inconveniences, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do. We had our IT department, I have to call out, was amazing. They were constantly looking at things like, do we have enough licenses for software? They loaned out something like 250 laptops to people that didn't have an adequate hardware, to take with them wherever they were going. And we're just literally around the clock, sort of helping people with issues that they might have. I think at the end of the day, as the weeks went on and people started getting in the groove, online education, people understood this is on both sides, faculty as well as the students. This is something we're going to have to work on together. And one thing we have at Embry-Riddle, which is pretty significant, is the worldwide campus. And for those listening who don't know, that is the premier, online education. This is I think we've been in business for 25, 30 years now. It's, it's routinely ranked as number 1, number 2, or at least in the top 5. I think this year it's ranked number 2 by U.S. News and World Report. Should be number 1, but they are good. And their skills and their expertise, I think, trying to help residential faculty who had never taught online was a real help. So hats off to them.
Yeah, I think also from being a professor myself in the aeronautical science department, a lot of us, I know I spent many hours helping other professors migrate some things online and teach them some tricks about Canvas to make it a little easier for them. And, all
yeah, that's usually where things are learned. You go to your colleagues, right? You know someone that kind of has about your skill set or your knowledge set, and you try to help them, lift them up a little bit. So thank you for doing that.
Oh yeah, it's fun to kind of help change the way people teach and get them used to different technologies and things. And I think the students kind of really enjoy when things are kind of flipped around a little bit too, to give them some more.
The one thing I heard from a lot of faculty afterwards was that they really appreciate the effort that it takes to do quality online teaching. I think that was something faculty had not taught online. I think this is not just at Embry-Riddle, but I've read this in the Chronicle and other places, that faculty who were asked to teach online, never taught before, suddenly realized the skill set and the effort and the work it takes to do a really good job of teaching online. And they've learned things from that, which is good.
Well, if we switch to going from online back to in the classroom, Embry-Riddle recently announced face-to-face teaching will resume on June 30th. And you've sent several messages out about the university's path forward to opening for fall and now June 30th. Can you talk about the resumption of classes and how that kind of relates to our safety culture at Embry-Riddle?
Yeah, so as we've gone through these daily meetings talking about the future of Embry-Riddle and what are we doing this summer, what are we doing in the fall, we were feeling really confident in the fact that the types of things we were doing to try to make the campuses safety tops, and we had a few little examples I'll share with you, were working. People were doing what they're expected to do. Really set us up for the fact that for the summer, and what we're calling Summer B, effectively, which starts July 1st, that we would go ahead and move that to face-to-face instruction. I think we're probably one of the earlier schools in the country that is doing it. We didn't do it just off the cuff. We actually gave a lot of thought to this, and we looked at all the things that we're doing. As you mentioned, being an aeronautical university, safety culture is at the core of everything we do. And part of that culture is not just somebody writing down a bunch of rules, but it's a culture of everybody following it. And that's the only way you can make things work. And so we live that culture day in and day out. We're inherently in a risky business, and people know that. And so it goes beyond aviation. It goes into chemistry labs. It goes into just walking around campus. I've told students, I said, if you see me as the president, roll through a stop sign on campus when there's nobody around, report me. And that's part of this culture of sort of it's okay to call things out because it's going to help us all in the future. And so we live that culture. And so as part of that, we're also very accountable. So in other words, we know that this isn't just the president saying we're going to do A, B, C, and D. This is everybody living what we're going to say we're going to do and being accountable to one another. And we have that at Embry-Riddle. And so I feel pretty good with that culture to go ahead in the summer to start with the face-to-face instruction. So we have students coming back to both residential campuses, and we're getting ready for it now. It's really built around sort of four pillars that go with it. There's physical distancing type things, and you've probably heard about this in the news and seen it perhaps if you've been out to a restaurant or whatever place you might go, a store. It's things like making sure that people maintain distances. It's making sure that you have a flow of traffic into and out of classrooms, for example. In essence, what you're trying to do is what the public health experts have said, try to keep the density of people fairly low and keep them separated. And so we're doing that through a lot of means on the campuses with signage, removing chairs from high density areas. So if you walk into the libraries, once the summer school starts, you'll find out that a room that used to have 8 chairs in it now has only 4. You might see that every second computer screen is off intentionally. And so we're doing little things like that to sort of say, this is how you're going to physically distance yourself from one another. Now, with that said, the only way that's going to work is if the people who walk into those rooms know that that's what we want and they actually are compliant with it. If they're not, it's really useless. And so we really are asking everyone to be a part of this. The second part we have is, sort of the engineering type solutions, putting up barriers. If you walk into the admissions office now, there's a nice plexiglass barrier to separate the receptionist from those who are coming to visit campus. And we're already having campus tours again. We're doing family units. So not groups of people, but family units, following all the rules, face masks and everything else. We have some administrative solutions, we're calling them, and that is health wellness screenings. We've been doing temperature checks since March 5th or 6th, I think. I think we've done something tens of thousands now. It doesn't do everything, but it's one more layer of protection. We know that as a fact. We're cleaning things like you can't believe. And finally, there's the personal solutions that we're putting in place. We're requiring face masks on campus. Everybody on campus now wears them. Those who come to campus are wearing them. If I walked outside right now and the groundskeepers out mowing the grass or cleaning up or something, they have them on. It's got to be everybody from students to faculty and staff. And so with all that said, our feeling is that summer is a good time to test our system, because while we think it may work well, it might not. There may be areas where we didn't think about. And so before we get a rush of students in the fall, our thought is, let's try it out in the summer where we have a lower density of students, fewer students, and let's just kind of take notes and fix things along the way. A good engineering solution, right? You design it and then you go back and you iterate on it and make it better, so that when the students, the big group of students arrive in the fall, we'll have the ability then to say, well, these are the things that work really well, and these are the things we need to work with. And we've had some good examples so far.
I know that both flight departments are open and flying. I think the last numbers we saw combined, we're doing about 300 flights a day already. So definitely some movement there.
Yeah, so flight is I just have to bow down to the folks that operate those programs. I mean, Dean Stolzer, Dr. Stolzer, and the others. It's Tim Holt, and it's amazing. These programs are inherently dangerous. We know that just as the nature of what we're teaching. But as I said earlier, safety is part of the DNA of those programs. So those programs put in place some pretty significant processes and procedures early on, and they have continued to improve on those over time. We did shut down flight during the when both Arizona and Florida had the stay-at-home orders. When those were lifted, we went back. We talked about it first. We went through all the pros and cons, and we decided to go ahead and start up the flight programs under very restrictive conditions. And if you go to the flight ops now, and I encourage people to watch online, there's some pretty interesting videos that have been circulated to some pretty significant businesses in that of how to really run a safe program. From the time you walk in the door, you're not allowed to touch the door handle unless you first sanitize your hand. There's a big sign there that says sanitize hand before you open the door. Now that tells you from that point on, everything you do in flight ops is going to be controlled by safety and health of the students, the flight instructors, and those who work behind the desk. I go over there periodically, and it's a pretty amazing story. I think the numbers now are, I think in Daytona, I think they've run about 3,700 operations. That includes flights, simulators, and oral exams, and then about half that probably out at Prescott. And again, this is sort of a learning lesson for all of us, and I think we can all draw from it as we go forward. But they've done a really good job, and but they're continuing to improve. Even getting in the airplanes, there's a checklist for how to clean the plane. So before you even get in there and start checking all the ailerons and starting the engine and everything, there's a checklist that says clean this, 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 and this. And that, to me, that's a statement about safety. It's a statement about procedures, and it's a statement about how we ought to do everything. And I think if we do, we'll contribute to helping fight back this virus. We're not going to be developing vaccines at Embry-Riddle. We know that, right? That's not our area. But we can do our best part to put in place procedures and safety activities. That's what we're good at. And that, combined with the experts out working on vaccines and other things, we can lick this.
Well, let's talk about fall and enrollment when people come back. Do you have any thoughts on how the pandemic is going to impact enrollment for fall at all of the campuses?
Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of folks out there in higher education with their crystal balls trying to predict what's going to happen in the fall, and there's experts at the in all the bond rating agencies and everybody trying to figure out what's going to happen to enrollment in higher ed in general across the country. And it makes sense because never ever have we had a situation where you just can't rely on historical data. Normally in higher ed, by the time you get to May, you're starting to know within a couple percent what the fall enrollment's going to be. People have said, yes, I'm coming. They've put their money down. They've registered for classes, et cetera. So you have a pretty good handle on it. Right now, the message in higher ed is those numbers just, you can't rely on them because there's so much, not only that has happened, but potentially could happen moving forward. The economy, for example, people's interest in leaving where they live to go somewhere else. But with that said, right now, Embry-Riddle is doing quite well. It's still early in the summer, it's the end of May. But if we look at our comparisons between last year, in Prescott, for example, we actually have more deposits than we did last year. Again, we have to wait and see what happens by August. But that's a pretty strong statement for the institution and for the campus. Daytona Beach, it's just off of a couple percent, but it's early, it's hard to tell. And then the third part of it, the worldwide campus, the enrollments there are looking very strong right now. So again, we have to temper that. We have to sort of look at it and say, throughout the summer, we need to continue to follow up with those students. We have been calling people and checking with them and just getting everything worked out. We still have a lot of issues to work on, for example, just moving in and all those sorts of things in the fall. But right now, the demand is looking good. But we're not naive. We know that there's incredible things happening in the world right now. We're also, questions about the international students in terms of travel, all those sorts of issues. But right now, the interest level is still very, very strong.
Well, I'd like to kind of switch gears just a little bit and talk about the aerospace industry in general. And prior to March, it was growing and lots of employment opportunities, lots of job paths for our students to take. And the markets have changed. So I wanted to get your opinion both on, what your opinion is of that market and the future for it, and what kind of a challenge people might seeking a job. And then also kind of bring up, if the economy slows down, typically students tend to maybe attend graduate school instead. So if you could kind of talk about your view on the market and maybe some ideas for students moving forward.
Yeah, I think you'll obviously interview people from industry. You did last time, and you'll have others that probably have a better handle on the business side of it. I don't profess to be an expert in terms of, I read a lot in terms of what's going on with the airlines and the manufacturing and that. And you have others that are really probably better suited for that. But let me share just my thoughts from the higher education perspective. It's clear we were hit with unprecedented times in terms of, right near the end of the school year, job offers in place, internships in place for students, which is a big part of Embry-Riddle, getting internships. I'm constantly amazed at the types of internships and the numbers that our students have been getting. And then that gets all upset with what's happening in the economy, and also what's happening with just in general travel and so on. Our career services offices have been outstanding. They've been continuing to work with students while they've been elsewhere, not on the campuses, virtually again, through virtual career opportunities, meeting with people from industry, getting tips, helping them understand how important it is to be proactive, not just to sit around and wait for this to pass, but be proactive, get out there and talk to people and knock on doors. And how to interview online, how to do sort of what we're doing right now. If you're doing your job interview, and it depends on this, our career service offices have been outstanding in terms of helping our students, I believe, in that area as well. And then also reaching out to our alumni. We've had some really nice alumni events, gatherings, virtual gatherings, and that helps networking, which is very important anytime, but especially in times like this. So, just in general, in terms of the situation right now, there's no question it's a very tough job market. There's a lot happening right now. If you look at the industry, and this is, again, just my observations, if you go back, to the 1990s, 1980s, there's been 4 or 5 major events, that have upset our industry, and then mostly the air travel part of it, I'm saying, but that filters out into manufacturing and everything else. 9/11 was the obvious one. SARS, you had the economic downturn, things like that happening. If you look at sort of the trends over time, it's always come back. There's always a time constant in there as to how long it takes to get back to growth, but it bounces back in a way that continues to grow. And if you look at the industry in general, prior to the pandemic, if you just look at the industry, and you don't like to do this, but think of it as like the sort of the economy of the industry, and compare it with the GDP of countries, it would be like the 21st largest country. So if there was a country that was, aviation, aerospace, what I'm trying to make a comparison there is that it's huge. It impacts people all over the world. It impacts business. It impacts personal lives in terms of travel. Tens of millions of people employed somewhere in the industry. So it's not going away. It's going to have a correction curve here as it goes through this time. And a lot of it will depend on what happens, I think, with being able to develop a vaccine, but also some of the engineering solutions built around what's future travel going to look like with respect to aircraft. And we've seen a lot of that in the news lately. But the industry itself has been very, very good at bouncing back, and people can take on these problems. I've told students, some of the people I've met, in fact, we had one on campus recently, about a year ago, talking to students, and this was when the times were really good. And he said, when he was going through school, times weren't good. And he said, and he shared with him his lessons about what it means to really be proactive, go out there and try everything, take what you can get, try to build connections. And for a group of students at the time who were looking at, multiple job offers, it was an important message, I felt, because I think we all know, doesn't matter what the industry is, there's ups and downs. But to hear from someone who, for example, was coming out of school right after 9/11, or someone who was coming out right during the economic downturn, 10 or 15 years ago, to hear from someone like that hopefully resonated with the students, and they can still draw on those messages. And I think that's a very valuable lesson. Some of the people I've met, many of the people I've met who are incredibly successful today, did not start at a time when life was good in the industry. They struggled initially. And I firmly believe that beyond everything you learn in the classroom, that ability to understand how to drive something is really going to help you. I think in a lot of ways for students right now, I'd say, the industry right now is sort of in a reset type, position. Everything's getting reset. You have companies filing for bankruptcy. You have different things happening. It's a reset position. But to be at the ground level for the next growth, for the future of the industry, it's an ideal time to really, sort of stand out. And I know Embry-Riddle students stand out. They're going to get those opportunities. And so in the big picture, yes, it's challenging times right now, but I feel really good about it in terms of what I've seen, and mostly because of the types of graduates that we have. I think that they set the standard in the industry, and I think that's really, really top.
Yeah, I know when the last downturn came, instead of going to the airlines, I personally went back and got a master's degree to start with. So trying to take advantage of whatever situation we have at the current time.
Yeah, and those are good opportunities. I mean, it's something everybody should look at regardless of the downturn or whatever it is. But the opportunities for graduate degrees, if you talk to industry folks in the hiring area, that this idea that you have sort of broadly talented people, people like you who have backgrounds in aviation and then also in business perhaps, and mixing the technical with the business side of things. Those are things that are really going to pay off. Maybe not tomorrow, but down the road, absolutely. There's incredible opportunities for students in those areas right now to go out and pick up a master's degree if that's what they so choose to do. Again, I just looked at Embry-Riddle and say we've got the best in the world in our worldwide. If people want to take them from home, or if they want to go back to a campus and take one, you've got some incredibly highly ranked programs. So a lot to pick from.
Well, I know we've been talking a lot about now and the current situation, but you've been president now for a little over 3 years of the university. And I was just kind of curious if you could kind of talk about what it's been like for you and what you've learned during that time, besides also getting your private pilot certificate there too.
It's been wonderful. I've told a lot of my friends that I still stay in touch with from my previous job and elsewhere. I always say, this is I feel like a little kid. It's an amazing place. The institution it's me. I love being around people like you and others that just sort of live and breathe what we do here: aviation, aerospace type activities. The fact that when there's a rocket launch, you've got in Florida, if you're at the campus there, you've got probably a couple thousand students out on the rooftops watching, and just everything is it's sort of me. And so it's been wonderful. I'd say if there's one word that I've used more than anything else, and when people say, well, what's it like at Embry-Riddle? It's passion, and it just shows up. It shows up from the time students show up as like 12-year-olds or 13-year-olds interested in maybe taking a summer course with us, a summer program, to when they come and do admissions, to when they're students, faculty, the staff who work here. It's really part of it. And if you work in an environment where people have the passion for really what you're all about, it makes life so much better. I mean, you just feel it every day. Yes, there's downtimes. I mean, this last couple of months has been challenging for everyone. There's no question about it. But when I look at what's going on in the world and people that are really suffering from some of this, I look at, our Our challenges are just how to deliver an education system safely and in a healthy environment for our students, and continue their education, because it's a really good education. And I feel good about what we're doing. And so, it's been great. We have an incredibly loyal alumni group. I got to tell you, the first summer I went to Oshkosh, when I was president, I'd only been in the office for a couple of months, and I went to this alumni event. It was like a Wednesday evening, and it was pouring down rain, I think. I'm just trying to remember, but there were like 600 alums that showed up, and I could have spent, all day with them. It just, again, it's this passion for who they are and what they do. And we've got this an amazing board of trustees that does anything to help this institution. I mean, and it shows in the facilities. If you look around the campuses now, it shows in the types of investments they've made. Significant hundreds of millions of dollars in investments in facilities and laboratories, aircraft, buying new aircraft just recently. Had just a few delivered at Prescott. I think this last weekend I saw a nice photo on Twitter with the 3 diamonds in the hangar and looking nice and shiny. And that's all leadership. The people in the leadership positions saying, this is what we need to do to make the institution better. So, it's fun. It's a great place. I just said that my only regret is I didn't come here, 20 years ago as a student or whatever. So, but it's been a good opportunity. And the other part I'll share with you quickly is, the interactions with industry are just amazing. I mean, it's, I feel really good walking in and talking to executives and others in industry, because the name Riddle is so, I think, well received in our business, and that gets you in the door and a step in the right direction. And I think that's really great to have that kind of a activity.
Well, one thing I'd like to also kind of talk about the future is we've got a university strategic plan that's been developed for the next 5 years plus. And I was wondering if you could share a little bit about what the university might look like in 5 or 10 years, and also tie in the diversity initiatives that are going in on campus as well.
Sure. I'll talk about the diversity first. So ironically, I guess the very last major event I went to before the pandemic hit was the Women in Aviation International Conference over in Orlando. And that's been a big push of mine. My wife as well, Dr. Audrey Butler, she and I both have worked hard, I think, to try to really make that front and center of something that we really want to have an impact on. It's an obvious one. I use the word no-brainer, but there's such an imbalance between the genders in our industry. I think there's amazing opportunities out there for women in both in aviation, the engineering aspects, the business aspects, et cetera. And we just want to do whatever we can to try to help promote that and make it work. As you know, it's a great industry, and it's one where people are so passionate about it. Wouldn't everybody want to be part of it? And so we're at this conference over in Orlando, and it's I walked in, and it was just amazing. I mean, we had an alumni event there as well, and to see so many of our graduates doing so well in the industry, to see all these young women there with just amazing careers already in place, doing great things, volunteering in their communities. That was a wonderful time. I mean, it was just really worth going to. We had some students, I think, because it was in Orlando, the ones from Daytona when it's in Las Vegas, or on the West Coast, I should say, they travel from Prescott. So just that presence of Embry-Riddle, but it needs to be larger. I mean, there's no question about it. So we're working hard on that, trying to do our best to recruit, to try to create an environment where it's welcoming, and then also trying to provide whatever kind of support we can. Started a women's network that's to help both with scholarships as well as with mentorships, just having someone to talk to, and how important that is. So we're working on that, and that will be part of the future, as you asked about. But the bigger picture for the future is, Riddle is we have a strategic plan, and it's very clear. The overarching statement there really is to be sort of the unquestioned global leader in higher education and aviation and aerospace. No questions asked. It's Embry-Riddle. I think I'd say we're there now. but you always have to shoot for something. But I feel really proud about where we are. But I think really just pushing that even higher, unquestioned leader in that area. But adding to get there, you have to add to it in sort of the things that we do beyond putting out incredible graduates. We're growing some really nice research programs that get a lot of attention. I think that's important. We're also trying to stay on top of what industry is doing. You look at the changing industry. You mentioned in the intro things about sort of data analytics, aviation data science, things like that, autonomous vehicles, cybersecurity in aviation is another one. These are all areas that are out there that you hear about that are important, that are industries interested in. Autonomous related aircraft in terms of either single pilot or a purely autonomous aircraft. So trying to have research that sort of supports those sorts of things is important. And then as your introduction said, today was supposed to be, and hopefully it'll be this weekend, a real important date in history to get back into space with the SpaceX launch with the 2 astronauts, and then ultimately beyond that. The commercial space side of it is another area where we're seeing more and more interest in trying to grow that as well. So we provide that workforce and provide some opportunities for our faculty as well to be involved. So I see all of that as part of it. I think ultimately you can't change the fabric of Embry-Riddle, though. With doing all this, you still have to keep Embry-Riddle who we are, because we're a great institution. You just have to make sure you keep that there, that people are proud of the institution, they're proud of their degree. They work to hire, graduates from here because they came from here, all those sorts of things. But on top of that, you just make it better and better. The one thing I told the faculty and staff early in the year was, Embry-Riddle, moved from Miami to Daytona in the 1960s, and then out to Prescott in the 70s, Singapore, in the early 2000s. When it made that move from Miami to Daytona Beach, if you've seen the pictures, it's like 100 trucks driving down the highway with the equipment in the back of them. And they moved it in a couple days. And what I tell people is there were people at that time who had a vision for the future of Embry-Riddle, and they put their effort into it and their resources as well, and they made it happen. And it took, decades to build and build and build. And so a lot of people have contributed to who we are and where we are today on both campuses, Daytona as well as Prescott. And so we have to recognize those people as well, and as we move forward.
All right. Well, I know we're wrapping up with our time, and I want to get to some of the audience questions. We thought it'd be fun to have a little speed round with you.
Okay.
So a couple really quick questions for you,
all right,
if you're ready.
Sure.
What is your favorite aircraft?
Favorite aircraft? Oh boy, it depends on the day. So philosophically, the Wright Flyer, you can't not like the Wright Flyer. We have it right outside my office here. But putting that aside, the SR-71, the Blackbird, you got to give credit to the designers and the pilots who flew them. And in the 1950s, to build something that if you built it today it would look hot, that's an amazing statement. So purely the SR-71, but I don't forget about the Wright Flyer.
All right.
For all the reasons, all the obvious reasons.
Started it all.
Yeah.
Oh, so you have undergraduate and graduate degrees in aerospace engineering. What is your favorite aspect of aerospace engineering?
Propulsion. Everything as a professor I had in class, Professor Herman Cryer, who was he just made me interested in this. And it was the first time after all these courses in science and math that I had something that I really could kind of connect it all to something real. And it was air breathing propulsion, and then I took rocket propulsion. Came really close I'd say really close to going to work right out of my undergrad for a major engine manufacturer, but decided to stay and go to grad school. But propulsion is the top of my list.
Okay. What's the best aviation experience you've ever had?
Oh boy, I had a lot of them. I'd say going to the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum. I used to go there when I was a child, the old one. This is before they were on the mall, with my dad and my siblings whenever people were coming to town. And I just liked looking at the things they had on display. And so I kind of grew up with that, and also air shows. We would go to a lot of air shows. So I'd combine those experiences as a kid, And then right after I started my career, I worked a summer in right outside of Washington, D.C. I was out there living by myself. I went to the new Air and Space Museum all but probably 3 weekends. So I think I got in like 12 visits during the summer as an adult. And so that combination of just going to the museums and seeing, all the historical artifacts and that, it just, those are great experiences.
And last speed question, who was the best mentor that you ever had?
Oh, Herman Cryer, the fellow I just mentioned, Professor Cryer, I should say. He was my undergraduate propulsion professor, as I told you. He's the one who said to me one time, you really should go to grad school. I think you can. And I didn't think I could. Didn't think I saw all these people called grad students, and well, that wasn't me. But he talked me into it, and we have been we worked together for decades until he retired, and we still connect with one another. But he was amazing to me as a young professor and also as a graduate student.
All right, thank you. Now, I've been going through some of the audience questions, and I noticed we have answered a lot of them already.
Okay.
Some of the ones that have come up are, how will social distancing in the dorms and dining halls be managed?
Okay, social distancing, that's in the news a lot, and we are very serious about that. A couple of ways. As I said earlier, we're doing things like spreading out tables. Our schedules for dining, I should say, our schedules, we'll try to have classes organized in a way that not everybody is running to the cafeteria at 11:50 a.m. and leaving at 12:50 to go to class. Scheduling differences, so you have kind of more of a spread out flow of traffic. These are little sort of minor things you can do to try to help. But in the residence halls as well, we have a lot of things, signage we're putting up. But as I said earlier, none of that is going to work unless people support it. And we can't have campus security running around watching for these sorts of things. Everybody, all thousands of students on the campuses and faculty and staff have to be practicing it. And what I tell people is, it's not about you, it's about others that you might be infecting, and maybe their family members and others that they come in contact with. So we're really working hard on that. We've done a few little fun things to kind of help out. We produced some t-shirts that have some really cool things on them, like hold short, for aviation. It says hold short 6 feet. It's kind of to tell people stay away 6 feet. We got one that has a jet engine on it, and it says blast zone, stay back 6 feet. So we're hoping students will wear these and just kind of, they're subtle reminders as people are walking around campus. Hey, that's a reminder I should try to keep my distance. I know what it's like to be 20 years old and, in college and that, and it's going to be a challenge. But if we don't have students and faculty and staff doing their part, we're not going to be doing our part to help beat this virus. And if we don't, we're not going to recover sooner. So it's all sort of a cycle. If we do our part, we'll get back on our feet economically. The industry will recover. We'll be back to where we were before. If we don't do our part, it's going to linger on for a long time, and we all pay the price. And that's not even talking about the health side of it and the impact on people. But so we're really going to rely a lot on people as well as the things that we've put in place.
Okay, next question. Can you address the 14-day self-quarantine requirement for anyone entering Florida from Louisiana, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York?
Yeah, so there are this has changed over time with both campuses. This question is for Florida, but also for Arizona as well. There have been statements out there as well about about different hotspot areas. I think it's going to continue to evolve. What I would say right now is it's still early in the summer. I think after June 1st, we'll start seeing more information in terms of recommendations on those areas and whether they even will be in place or not. So it's a little early to be sort of directing to do certain things at this time. We're still almost 3 months away from the fall semester, 2.5 months. So my recommendation is keep an eye on the website. We track it as closely as you do. And we want to make sure that we get you the right information, but it's not going to come tomorrow. It's going to have to wait a little bit until we see, I think post June 1st or 2nd, we should have some information coming out as well. But we're doing what we can within the state guidelines on both states, but also we'll be tracking it and communicating with everyone.
Okay. And last question, we got about a minute left. What was your most rewarding experience you've had so far since becoming president of Embry-Riddle?
My most rewarding experience, it's I think it was probably that not one, but multiple times, commencement and meeting alumni. Commencements, they're rewarding for us as faculty, you know that. And meeting alumni, you get to see what they've accomplished. So, you know, it's just that level of interaction with the product, the students that we've educated.
Hopefully this interview will be a close second. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Butler, for spending time with us and answering our questions tonight. It was certainly a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you. I'll be watching the program in the future. I hope that we have some additional guests on here, and I know we've got some planned.
Yes, I know Dr. Stolzer will talk about that in just a second. So now I'd like to welcome back Dr. Stolzer for some closing comments. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Dr. Butler, really appreciate that. That was both informative and enjoyable. And thank you for your strong leadership of Embry-Riddle, particularly through this crisis we're facing. And Bob, great job moderating as always.
Thank you.
To our audience, I want to say that we're very close to finalizing our next Aviation Outlook speaker, and you will definitely not want to miss this one. To say that this individual we are planning for is known throughout the industry and is very influential is a huge understatement. Keep monitoring our webinar webpage and university communications as well for more information, which we expect to post probably within the next couple of days. And with that as a teaser, thanks for joining us, everyone. Really appreciate the turnout. Have a great evening and stay safe.